The chart for Elvis Presley, born January 8, 1935 at 4:35 a.m. in Tupelo, Mississippi. If we were to look at the eastern horizon when he was born, we would see the 8th sign of Scorpio rising in the first house at 19 degrees and 24 minutes. 19 degrees and 24 minutes is unique to Elvis's chart and becomes the most effective point of every house. Any planet that is within 5 degrees, say from 14 degrees to 24 degrees, has great impact in this chart. We see that Mars is almost on the most effective point, and it has a lot of impact in his chart. And then also Sun is within barely within 5 degrees, so it has some impact as well. If we were to take a overview of his life and see what he was working on in this lifetime, we would see that any house that contains a Multicorna sign, which are 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 11, are the things that he's working on, the things that the house represents. We see the second house contains a Multicorna sign, and that has to do with continuation of the marital bond, wealth, and fame, as well as speech. And we see that the fourth house of happiness and home life is something he was working on, containing the 11th sign of Aquarius. We see the sixth house contains the Multicorna sign of Aries, ruled by Mars, and he was working on health and financial issues, conflicts, delays, setbacks. We see that the ninth house, containing the fourth sign of Cancer, is a Multicorna sign, and so he was working on his spiritual growth. We see the house of career, the 10th house, is something he was working on. You have the sign of Leo, Multicorna sign of Leo, ruled by Sun. In the 11th house of fulfillment of desires, income, and friendships is something he was working on. You see the sixth sign of Virgo, ruled by Mercury. And in the 12th house, the house of liberation, he was working on depression and sleep, addictive issues, loss of separations, expenses. You have the seventh sign of Libra, ruled by Venus. So let's go take a look at and see how the planets are operating. Now, Scorpio is a water sign. It's fixed. Gave him good emotional ability to connect with others through his music. Let's see. Sun is at 24 degrees and rules that 10th house of career. So it says that, and it's conjunct with Mercury. And Mercury is ruling this house of income. So you have income, and we connect all of those things, income and career, through leadership abilities and ability to communicate, and to his speech, his sweet speech through singing, and his songwriting, his all of those things. So these two conjunct give this very powerful ability to be a singer and a songwriter. And that's how his income and his career was given. Now, the ruler of this house is weak because it's in the 12th house. Any Multicorna sign in the 6th, the 8th, or the 12th houses, which are challenging houses, the ruler of those signs becomes functional malefic. So you see in this 6th house of challenges, you have the sign of Mercury, and it's ruled by, a sign of Aries, ruled by Mars. So Mars becomes functional malefic. And then in the 12th house, you have the sign of Libra, ruled by Venus. Venus becomes functional malefic. And any planet that is in those houses or ruling those houses, if it's Multicorna sign, becomes weak. So Jupiter becomes weak. It is the landlord of this house, and so it affects the planets in that house. Now, Mercury is automatically weak because any planet that's more than 25 degrees or less than 5 degrees is in old age or infancy, and it cannot protect itself, so it becomes weak. So then we look at Moon, and Moon is ruling the ninth house of spiritual growth and good fortune and legal issues and problems with the government and father. So he did have issues with father. I think father left at a very young age. And Moon represents mother. So mother had problems. She was depressed. I think he had to live with somebody else at some point. His mom was not well. But and this also affects the heart. And Sun, because it was weak, and Moon becomes weak, gave issues with his heart. Moon represents mind and emotions because it's weak. It affects depression and addictions. So there's definitely that going on with his life. Mars is at 19 degrees, very powerful, but it is a functional malefic. So, and it's close to the most effective point because very, very powerful. It rules this sixth house of health issues. So he had lots of health issues, financial issues, ups and downs in his life, and brought a lot of conflict. And it's in this house of income, so ups and downs with the income. And it is afflicting 4, 7, and 8 houses away. Mars afflicts those houses. So it's afflicting 1, 2, 3. It's afflicting this house of income. 1, 2, 3, 4. The house of speech and a continuation of the marital bond. He had troubles with relationships. 5, 6, 7. The house of children. It limited the number of children. And education and investment. And 8. Caused trouble for his health. So let's see here. Mercury is at 29 degrees. We already talked about it. It's very weak. It rules this 11th house of income, and but did give income through his songing ability to communicate. Mercury is all about communications, writing, publishing, singing, songwriting. Jupiter is at 25 degrees. It's in this Dustan Baba house, the house of challenges. And Jupiter has to do with family, children, limited the number of children because it's weak. And so those are the main things about Jupiter. Venus is also, it's functional malefic. So Venus represents wife, and it's in this, it's ruling this 12th house of losses, expenses, end of life, end of marriage, had troubles with his relationships. And it is also afflicted by Rahu on top of that. But Rahu gives, now Venus has to do with entertainment, performing arts. So gave some abilities for the entertainment, but also brought, because Venus is in this 12th house of depression, addiction, brought some of that. Now, Venus also has to do with occult sciences, so he was very interested in astrology at some point in his life. Saturn is weak at 2 degrees, and it rules this house of family, and it's in its own sign. That makes it somewhat more powerful. It gives emotional stress and addiction and depression as well, because it is weak. And this is the house of family, but also happiness. So it's affecting his happiness. Rahu is at 6 degrees, and it is afflicting Venus, but giving ambition and desire for performing arts, the entertainment industry as well. And K2 is giving insights into spirituality and that he expressed through his songs. Now, let's look at when the planets were operating, and then we'll talk about the remedies for the chart. So he got married in 1955 during a Jupiter period. Jupiter is family. He also had a daughter during a Saturn period. Saturn is family. He got a divorce during a Saturn-Venus period. Venus is weak and wife, so that makes sense. And then he had a heart attack during a Saturn-Moon period. Moon is heart as well as sun. So Moon is definitely weak in this chart. And then just get rid of these things real quick. So the other things are that he died during, he had a heart attack and died, I think it was in 1977, during that Saturn-Moon period. So what can we do to strengthen this chart? What would have helped him in this chart? So wearing a gavash to strengthen all his benefic planets, which are Saturn, Moon, Sun, and Mercury, as well as Jupiter. And then we want to transform his functional malefics. Mars, by helping men that are like brothers, listening to Hanuman chants on Tuesdays, listening to Lakshmi chants for Venus on Fridays, and helping women, helping spiritual organizations, listening to Ganesh chants for K2 on Thursdays, helping those who cannot help themselves on Saturdays, and listen to Shiva chants on Mondays. All of those things would have helped him fix your life, fix your chart. Those would have helped him with his depression, his problems in his relationships, with his heart, and probably could have prolonged his life. Now, because Saturn is so weak, Saturn is the significator for longevity, so that probably shortened his life quite a bit. So these are the main points for the chart for Elvis Presley.